Let me tell you something about the day I sat alone in a hospital parking lot, a surgery bill in one hand and my phone in the other, waiting for my mom to call back. She never did. But you know who did call? My sister. Not to check on me. To ask if I could watch her kids that weekend because she had a spa thing. My parents had just wired her $42,000. $42,000. To save a boutique she ran into the ground with bad decisions and worse spending. And I needed $18,000 to not die. They said no. So I said, okay. And I got to work. What I built over the next 11 months didn't just save my life, it ended theirs. Financially, legally, and permanently. Stay with me. Because by the end of this, you're going to want to take notes. Before I tell you what I actually did, hit that subscribe button right now. Because the people in this story thought silence meant weakness. Stick around and find out just how loud silence can get. My name is Claire. I'm 31 years old. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio. And I have a scar running 6 inches down the left side of my abdomen that I used to hate looking at. Now, I trace it sometimes when I need to remember why I did what I did. Let me start at the beginning, or at least the beginning that matters. I grew up the middle child in a family of 3. My older sister, Dana, was the golden child from the moment she figured out how to flutter her eyelashes at my father over the breakfast table. My younger brother, Tyler, was the baby, untouchable, coddled, forgiven for everything from broken curfews to a Dewey at 19 that my parents quietly paid off. And then, there was me. I was the one who got good grades without being asked. The one who worked a part-time job at 16 to buy my own school clothes because mom said the budget was tight. The same month, they booked Dana a trip to Miami for spring break. I was the one who left for college on a partial scholarship I applied for entirely by myself, while my parents co-signed Dana's student loans without a second of hesitation. I told myself it was fine. I told myself families were complicated. I told myself I was stronger for it. I was wrong. I wasn't stronger. I was just quieter. After college, I landed a decent job in healthcare administration. Nothing glamorous, but I was independent, I was stable, and for the first time in my life, I was genuinely at peace. I had a small savings account, a used Honda I loved, and an apartment I decorated exactly the way I wanted with zero input from anyone. Life was good. Then, in October of 2023, I started losing weight without trying. At first, I told myself it was stress. Work had been hectic, I wasn't sleeping great, and I'd switched to eating less junk. I ignored it for 6 weeks. Then the pain started. Dull at first, then sharp, then constant. By December, I was sitting in a gastroenterologist's office being told I had a mass in my small intestine that needed to come out. Soon. The word mass hit me like cold water. The doctor was calm, clinical, careful, but I saw the look on his face. He didn't use the word cancer right away. But he scheduled a follow-up for 4 days later, and the way his assistant looked at me when I left the room told me everything I needed to know about what was coming. I drove home in silence, sat in my apartment for 2 hours without turning on a single light. Then, I called my mom. She picked up on the 3rd ring, mid-laugh at something my dad had said in the background. I heard the TV, heard dishes clinking, heard the warm, ordinary sound of family life rolling forward without me in it. I told her everything. The appointment, the mass, the fear that had been sitting in my chest since the second the doctor pulled up my scan. I told her I might need surgery. I told her I was scared. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, and I will never forget this as long as I live, "Claire, you've always been dramatic about your health. Let's not spiral before we know anything for sure." I said, "Mom, the doctor said it's serious." She said, "Well, what do you want ME to do about it?" I didn't have an answer for that. So I said goodnight, and I hung up. 3 weeks later, the biopsy confirmed it. Early stage, small intestine cancer. Highly treatable with surgery, the oncologist said. The procedure itself would cost, between the surgeon, the facility fee, and post-op care, somewhere between $16,000 and $20,000 out of pocket after my insurance maximum. I called my parents again. This time I had the paperwork in front of me. I was calm, organized, prepared. I told them the diagnosis, the treatment plan, the cost, and I asked, carefully, humbly, the way you have to ask when you've spent your whole life conditioning yourself not to need anything from people who resent giving, if they could help me with any portion of the bill. My dad said he'd call me back. He didn't. My mom texted 2 days later, "We just don't have it right now, honey. Maybe look into a payment plan?" And that was the moment something shifted in me. Not broke, shifted. Like a tectonic plate moving 1 quiet inch underground, no explosion, no earthquake, just a slow, irreversible repositioning of everything. Because I knew something they didn't know I knew. And I started making phone calls of a very different kind. 6 months before my diagnosis, I had been helping my parents organize some paperwork after my dad had a minor health scare of his own. Nothing serious, a cardiac screening that came back clean. But it spooked them enough to finally get their finances in order. My dad asked me, specifically me, to help sort through their documents because Dana didn't understand that stuff and Tyler was too busy. Story of my life. So I spent a weekend at their house going through folders, filing things, labeling accounts. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't looking for anything. But when you're the responsible one, people hand you information they don't even realize they're handing you. And what I saw was this. My parents had a joint investment account, a modest but real portfolio they'd been building for 20 years. Index funds, some bonds, a modest but respectable number sitting just above $110,000. Their retirement, their safety net. I filed it, labeled it, forgot about it. Until my mom texted me maybe look into a payment plan while I was sitting with a cancer diagnosis. That's when I pulled out the card I'd kept in the back of my mind without even knowing I was keeping it. I called their financial institution. I didn't pretend to be anyone I wasn't. I simply asked, as someone who had been listed as an emergency contact on their paperwork during that health scare, a detail my father had added and never removed, whether there had been any significant recent activity on accounts associated with their profile. The representative couldn't give me full details. But she confirmed that yes, there had been a substantial withdrawal in the past 60 days. $42,000. I already knew where it went. Dana had been loudly, publicly complaining for months that her boutique clothing store was failing. She'd posted about it on Facebook. She'd cried about it at Thanksgiving. She'd called it her passion project and her dream, and said she just needed a little runway to make it work. My parents had given her $42,000 of their retirement savings and told me to find a payment plan. I sat with that information for 3 days. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just sat with it and let it fully metabolize inside me until it stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like a blueprint. Then, I called a lawyer. Not a family lawyer, an estate attorney, specifically one who handled elder financial planning and asset protection. I laid out everything calmly. The account I'd seen, the withdrawal, my status as emergency contact, the fact that my parents were both over 65 and had just voluntarily depleted nearly 40% of their retirement savings to fund a failing business. She listened carefully. Then she asked me one question. Do you have any documented proof that you were denied financial assistance for a medical procedure during the same period this withdrawal occurred? I had the text from my mother. I had the voicemail where my dad said he'd call back and never did. I had my medical bills, my insurance statements, and 3 months of email correspondence with the hospital billing department. She told me that while there was no legal mechanism to force my parents to fund my surgery, they were allowed to spend their money however they chose. There was something else worth exploring. Dana's boutique had been structured as an LLC. And my parents hadn't just gifted her the money. They had made it a loan. A formal, documented loan, drawn up by a notary, with a repayment schedule, likely for tax purposes. Which meant it was a legal financial instrument. Which meant if Dana's business defaulted, which, given her sales numbers, it almost certainly would, my parents would be creditors with a legal claim. And here's where it got interesting. Dana had listed my father as a silent co-owner of the LLC when she filed the paperwork, probably to get better vendor terms. She'd done it casually, the way Dana did everything, without reading the fine print, without understanding the implications, without asking anyone who actually knew what they were doing. That co-ownership meant my father had potential liability exposure if the business incurred debts it couldn't pay. My attorney made 2 calls. Within 3 weeks, we had filed a formal legal notice requesting a full accounting of the LLC's finances. Citing my father's co-ownership stake, Dana had to respond. Her business attorney, a cheap one she'd clearly hired off the internet, panicked and made several procedural mistakes in the response that only made things worse. Meanwhile, I had my surgery. I crowdfunded $8,000 from coworkers and genuine friends in 11 days. I negotiated the remaining balance into a structured payment plan with the hospital. I went under anesthesia on a Tuesday morning in February, with 0 family members in the waiting room. I woke up with a scar and a plan. Over the following 4 months, the LLC audit revealed that Dana had been using business funds for personal expenses, luxury handbags, vacations, a home office renovation that had nothing to do with the boutique. The business owed nearly $60,000 to vendors and creditors. Because my father was a listed co-owner, he was named in the creditor claims. My parents burned through another $30,000 in legal fees, trying to extract my father from the LLC structure Dana had carelessly built around him. The boutique closed in June. Dana lost her investment completely. And my parents' retirement account, which had been $110,000 the year before, sat at just under $22,000. I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't even argue with my family. I simply pointed a flashlight at a structure that was already rotting and let gravity do the rest. My mother called me in August. She was crying. She said things had gotten really hard. She said she didn't know how they were going to manage. She said she wished the family could come together. I let her finish. Then I said, and I want you to notice I kept it very short because I had been planning those words for 8 months. I'm sure you'll figure it out, Mom. Maybe look into a payment plan. And I hung up. My scar is fully healed now. My payment plan has 4 installments left. My apartment still looks exactly the way I want it to. And I have never slept better in my life. Some families teach you that love is unconditional. Mine taught me that documentation is,